In this video, I want to discuss shareholders' interests in companies. And the example I'm going to use is L'Oréal Paris, which is a publicly traded company. It trades on the Euronext Paris stock exchange. And if you want to look up the company's share price, look up the ticker symbol OR. So we already know from the equities video in the financial securities and asset classes module, shareholders kind of have three main rights, as it were. It's the right to receive dividends. They also will have voting rights on major company decisions, and they will also have a claim on assets in the event of that the company is liquidated. So really, their motivation is to maximize, or their interest is to maximize profits and maximize the company value. Of course, maximizing the profits will increase the company's cash, increase the value of the assets, and they will also have more cash to pay out in dividends. So in turn, increasing the company profits will increase the company's value. So they're kind of the same thing, really. I also wanted to make the point that shareholders, they don't necessarily operate the company. They might take a more passive role, and certainly in the case of public companies, what they usually do is they elect a board of directors. So they'll elect a board of directors and they will look out for the shareholders' interests. For example, you might see in the news whenever a company's board member makes a statement, they'll often talk about, we're making this choice to maximize value for shareholders or something like that. Let's take a quick look at L'Oréal's shareholders. I thought this is quite an interesting exercise. So this is taken from 2017 December 31st, I believe, a snapshot taken on that day. What this shows is essentially the relative proportion of share ownership in the company. We can see the largest individual shareholder is Mrs. Francois Bettencourt Meyers and her family. These are the descendants of the people who started the company L'Oréal. So they've inherited those shares and the interest in the company. And then I also wanted to point out that there's two lines here, one for French institutional investors and then here international institutional investors. And together they own 29.28 and 8.24. So that's around about 37.52% of the company. So across investors, this is not one person. These are many institutional investors. So this might be pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and that kind of thing. They own around about 37.52% of the company. The shareholders of this company could actually be dispersed all around France and dispersed all over the world, international investors. So all the shareholders are not in one place, and there could be very many of them. And then here's another shareholder, Nestle. That's a big Swiss corporation, and I think they do food brands and that kind of thing. I'm sure you might have eaten Nestle cereal. They own 23.17%, and then individual shareholders. I think this is just like privately held stock. It's estimated they own around about 4.74% of the company, and then employees together hold 1.3% of the company, and then something called treasury stock down here, which is just basically shares that the company holds that haven't been assigned to any particular shareholder as of yet. Potentially they can sell those off and make some profits there, or liquidate them into cash, or give them to people. Perhaps they're waiting to award employees share bonuses or something like that. I'm not sure, but hopefully that gives you a good sense of who shareholders might be in the case of public companies. I do want to point out that in the case of private companies, they usually have much more concentrated shareholder bases. So maybe, for example, very small companies might only be owned by a few individuals or partners. But as you get up into public companies, because of capital raises and that kind of thing, it disperses the shareholder base. And the last point I wanted to make was that the shareholders are the most junior stakeholder in the capital structure. Basically what I mean is, in the event of liquidation, if you liquidate all the assets of the company, you'd get some cash, and the company has some outstanding loans, or maybe it's issued some bonds, and they would first need to pay off those people. So maybe the bankers and bondholders. Bondholders. Sorry about the scribbly writing. And then the rest of the cash would then be, well, if the company has made some profits, a chunk of that would be distributed to the government. You can kind of see the government as a large stakeholder in the company in that way. The rest of the cash would be distributed equally among the shares, and a shareholder, depending on how much shares they hold, would then receive the cash. The bondholders and bankers, they tend to be more senior in the capital structure because they get paid off first, and then you have the government is more senior also to the shareholders because if you make a profit, that is, and then the shareholders are the most junior. Okay, so hopefully that explains what shareholders' interests are in companies. See you in the next video.